As she said, my name is Joe Diaz, so thank you for that introduction, Cecile. What I'm going to do is I kind of broke this up into 3 parts so I could show a couple different techniques that I've used or processes to create this overall design. As you can see, the majority of this is all in vector. So if I go into wireframe here, I've got a few bitmap smoke effects going, but the majority of this is all created in vector. And I know it looks like it's a mess when it's in wireframe, but I've managed to kind of keep it all organized. And sometimes the easiest way of doing something like this is to kind of break it up into parts. So I felt like it would be appropriate to do this seminar in the same way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to a file that I've already started that talks a little bit about how I create the gears part of this design. These parts here. And I'm just going to kind of show you a few little tricks that I use to do that. So. Now usually when I plan this out, I started with kind of a rough shape on how I wanted the whole kind of gear assembly to go together. So this big circle here would be the large gear that is behind Stella, and then this area here would be kind of the background that supports the lettering, the Stella's lettering that goes over top of it. And then as I kind of work my way a little bit further, I start kind of planning out how the gears might work. And so when doing this project, what I actually did was I kind of figured out, okay, so the first thing I wanted to do was create this very large gear. And I wanted to kind of put some lettering in here that would kind of go with this ad. Then I thought what would be kind of cool is if I could somehow map out a way, well, let's pretend these gears actually turned and they actually work, so how could I have them set up? And so, if we were to actually build this, which is a possibility, what we could do is, hook one of these gears up to a motor and get them all to actually link up and turn. And if we were to create a dimensional sign piece out of that, that would be pretty cool. So when designing this, I kind of thought about how that would work. And so to create this, obviously you just use the simple ellipse tool here to make circles. And if you hold your control key down, you can kind of create a perfect circle. And one thing I want to for people that are kind of newer to Corel, I'm assuming that there's probably some that are watching that are a little bit newer to Corel. One tool I really like to use is the snap feature, and to get to that you go to View and then Snap to Objects, or what I like to do is hold down my Alt key and press C, and I like to toggle that on and off depending on what I'm doing. And the nice thing about that is if I were to create 2 circles here and had Alt-Z toggled on, now I can snap this. And you'll see once I get close to the center of the circle, it kind of snaps in there, and it even shows that I'm clicking onto the center. And so, from that I can kind of align these in a way that helps me make this overall shape. And, everything was kind of done in that way. And here again, turning this snap to objects feature off sometimes is nice to be able to do too. Sometimes especially once everything's kind of put together and you got a lot of different things layered on top of each other and you're moving things around. If you've got your snap to feature on there, it's going to want to snap to a lot of different things here. So I like to keep that turned off sometimes. So let me head back into here. And as you can see, then started to add a little bit more detail. And so what I want to do right now is kind of show you how to do a simple gear, kind of like, I'll actually show you how to create something like this. So to start, what I like to do is use the Polygon tool here, and I pull it out like that, and here again I'm holding the Control key down. The Shift key will do that, but so I like to use the Control key. Now up here you can add sides to the polygon, and you know what you want to kind of do is figure out how many grooves you want in the gear, and maybe get that set up beforehand. So I would do let's say 20 segments here. Then what I can do is I go to the shape tool here, and when you select a node on a vector shape and you're in shape tool, you get all these additional tools up here. Some will allow you to create this line segment into a curve. In this case, I'm going to add an additional node. And the cool thing about the Polygon tool is when I alter one part of one segment of this polygon, it will do it all the way around the entire shape. So what I like to do a gear is add a few nodes. In fact, what we might want to do is adjust this number to, let's say, 22 to see what that does. There we go. Now I'm going to rotate this because I want a flat end at the top. Let's rotate this by 90 degrees. There we go. And then so with the flat end, now I can maybe you know, use a square to kind of help me create this notch in the gear. I'm going to use the shape tool. And now with the snap to objects turned on, I can actually use this square that I created to help me create this notch here. So I'm going to add an additional node. Another way to add nodes is to simply just double click on the line that you want, and you can delete nodes the same way. And then I can delete this here, and so what I've done is created a pretty simple gear shape here. Now you'll notice I kind of rounded these, you know, with a gear. That might be the way that that's done, you know, to kind of help with the friction. So what you can do with that is if you go up into Windows and then Dockers, you'll see this option here, and I already have on my Docker over here. So I'm going to open that up. And so basically what you can do is select nodes, and in this case it is, oh, and I know why. What I need to do first is convert this whole thing to curves. So let me explain a little bit about what's going on there. Right now, this is still in a polygon, so I can actually add additional segments to this shape, and it will kind of continue to add you know, more notches in this case. So I'll put it back down to 22. But right now I can't actually round these corners because it's still in that mode. So what I would need to do is convert it to curves, and that's Control Q will do the same thing. So I've converted that to curves, and now what I can do is select all these nodes and hit apply. Oh, and now it's telling me that that's a little bit too large, so let's try a smaller measurement. And that might be a little small. We can maybe do it a little bit bigger than that. Let's try 0.03. And there you have it. So that kind of gives it a nice gear look. Now the center part of this is, I did it in this way. So what I like to do is create a circle, and here again using my snap to objects feature, I kind of snap that to the center of the shape. From there, what I'm going to do is create another shape, and this is just an abstract shape. I can duplicate this circle, and basically I'm using these circles as guides essentially. And so I'm going to create this abstract shape here, and if I select this line and I hit to curve, now I can actually turn that into this shape here. And anytime you select multiple shapes, for those that are newer to CorelDRAW, it's going to give us these additional, I'm not 100% sure what Corel calls them, but you know, in Adobe products they might be called Pathfinder tools. But this is kind of your weld and your trim. It's got your combine and your break apart. If you already have a shape that's kind of created out of multiple shapes. But so what I'm going to do here is select this shape, select the other shape that I just created, and hit intersect, and that creates this new shape that I created. Now I'm going to show you a little bit about the duplicate feature, and to do that you simply hold down Control and press the D, and it duplicates the shape. And by default in your file, if you unselect everything, you'll see your file settings here, and one of those settings is your duplicate distance, and I've got that set to 1/4 of an inch right now. So when I hit duplicate, it's going to move it up 1/4 of an inch and move it over 1/4 of an inch. So that's okay for the time being. What I'm going to do now is move it back to here. I'm going to click on the shape again right in the middle, and it's going to give me my rotate features. I'm going to actually move the pivot point to the center of this circle, and then I am going to rotate this just a little bit. Let's do it to there. And now when I hit Control D again, it's going to actually duplicate this, but it's going to do it, it's going to actually replicate the last move that I created. So if I keep hitting duplicate, what I've done is I've created that kind of fan look there, or pinwheel look. So that's kind of a cool little feature. So now that I've done that, I can actually get rid of this guide that I used and combine this whole shape together into a you know, a kind of a gear. And so you can see it's a little different than what I've created here, but that's kind of the idea of how I created the basic shape of the gear. And so when I created this design, I actually reused certain shapes over and over again. So I've got, you know, basically 3 different types of gears here. I've got this kind of straight axle gear. I've got a gear that's you know, actually just has one section going through it, and then I've got this kind of fan-like design gear. And I guess there would be 5 if you count this one here, and then also these little gears here. So as you can see, they kind of all link up, and right now we're still all in what, you know, basically designing it in wireframe. I don't have any fill. It's just kind of a way I like to keep things organized. But then once we get to that point, we could start adding more detail. So let's take this same gear that I've created over here. And then, you know, what I can then do from there is if you go down to here, you've got these additional tools here, and one of them is the Extrude tool. And that's basically how I kind of give this a 3-dimensional look. By default, it's going to kind of put it in perspective. And in this case, I didn't want it in perspective, so you can go up and actually change that setting here. And at this point in time, it might help to actually add fill, even if it's just kind of a light gray color. So let me go into enhance mode. And so I've added fill. And then if you actually use the right mouse key to click on your color, you can change the outline color. And so to do the gear, basically, the 3-dimensional part of it, I use this Extrude feature to do that. So kind of once you get that set up the way you want it, you can actually break it apart. And in my case, I broke it apart, and then I actually kept it in that way so that I could add a different color to it later. And then you'll see I actually created a kind of an ornate kind of the whole style of this has kind of got a Victorian, steampunk is the idea behind that is, if you think back, if you're from the States and you think back to the Civil War time, what would these guys be thinking the future is like? If you're in the Victorian age, what would people from that time think the future would be like? Obviously they wouldn't be thinking about nuclear-powered devices or fusion or anything along those lines. They'd be thinking about everything being powered by steam. Their imagination of the future would be, exposed gears and, how mechanical things were built back then, but, let's take it to the next level. So that's kind of the whole idea behind steampunk. And so, what we want to do is kind of include some of that classic, Victorian style elements into this design. And, to create something like that, we basically just use, I'm kind of a big fan of the Freehand tool, but there's also a really cool tool in here. It's called the B-spline. And the neat thing about that is you click once and click again, and you can kind of create nice curves and in this case, kind of a nice little curl. And so, that's basically how I do the skeleton of this shape, and then I'll actually come in with the shape tool and finish that up and make it look real nice. So I'll show you a little bit more about the freehand tool when I start doing the illustration part. I know that's I'd like to spend a lot of time on that, so I'm going to kind of wrap up this gear part. I'm going to show you real quick what I did to do the colors. What I like to do is basically kind of pick out some nice colors. In this case, I wanted a kind of a copper gold look, and so what I'll do is I'll create these boxes over here and kind of fill them in with colors that I want to kind of reuse over and over again. I don't have it set up on here, but a lot of times you can actually do custom color profiles down here that it will take the colors that you use in your file and it will kind of store them down here so you can get to them easily. I use that sometimes, but sometimes I like to just kind of create my own over here and also do ones with custom gradient fills. And in this case, what I've done is added color to that gear by let's show you real quick. I like to use the Color Eyedropper tool a lot to kind of quickly move things around. And like I said, I've already created this fill. So if you go to the Attributes Eyedropper, I'm sorry, and select this color, I can actually take that whole gradient color that I've created. Oops, let's ungroup this. And alter this in a way that I think looks appropriate for this gear. And then a lot of times when I'm doing flat shapes like this, and I kind of want to give it a kind of a metallic look, the gradient's the way to go. But yeah, so we just basically I just go around and I add colors that I think look good for that. The actual extruded part I'll keep real dark. Another thing I like to do, we kind of joke around about this. We call this the poor man's bevel in our shop, and there's a lot of bevel features in Corel, but this is kind of a real quick, easy way to create a nice bevel effect on shapes or lettering. So what you do is you take your shape and you duplicate your shape, and I'll put it right over top of the old shape. And I'm going to duplicate it one more time, and I'm going to take that third shape and I'm going to just move it down and to the right just a little bit. Then I'm going to select both shapes and I'm going to trim the top shape into the shape underneath. And so what I've created is this kind of shape here that when I add a lighter color to it, it kind of makes it look like a bevel. Now, it's not a true bevel. and when you get up close, it's not quite right. But from a distance, when color is added, and if it's just a real subtle color difference, it kind of makes it look like it's a little bit more dimensional, and it plays with the light a little bit, and it just makes it look a little bit more realistic. So that's how I created gears. What I'm going to do now is move over to the lettering part of it. Now what I did in this case is I created a custom lettering style, and sometimes when we're doing logos at our shop, we do that type of work. It depends on the job. Sometimes we'll just use a nice font that fits that application. In this case, what I like to do is grab a few fonts that I kind of like the style to kind of help me plan out my own lettering style. And in this case, I used a font called Agency. I also used the Star Trek font. I kind of like the way those S's looked, even though I ended up doing a little bit different than that. And then there was another font. I actually don't have it installed on this computer. I have it installed on another one on my laptop that's at home when I did this lettering. And it was a letterhead font. And if you're looking for great fonts, letterheadfonts.com is a fantastic source for that. And there's a font on there, I think it's called Fire Station or Firehouse, but that heavily influenced the lettering style that I created here too. So to create a lettering style is, it takes some practice, but once you get used to it, there's kind of a formula behind it, especially if you're doing kind of blockier looking lettering like this. So what I like to do is I either like to create a C shape or an E or an O to start off with, and it will kind of help me form the rest of these letters. So what I do is, I would create a grid like this. I would pull out these, or not a grid, but these guidelines here. And to do that, you simply just click up here and pull down. And those are helpful for kind of doing layouts, but I like to pull those out and create my different strokes that make up this lettering style. And here again, I'm using the snap to objects to help with this, so that everything lines up real nice, and I'm creating a more accurate shape. And so I'll also duplicate, like I want this line up here to be the same width as this, or the same height as this this shape. So I'll duplicate that, and so then I use this to kind of create maybe a basic O. And we'll widen this a little bit. Now from there, I can fill this in with color, and I can then use my my freehand tool here to help me break this up into my S shape that I want to create. So what I might do is just kind of create this random shape. Really what I'm wanting is this line here. So in fact, let me make this a gray so you can see it a little bit better. So my computer's doing a backup. There it goes. So now I've got a nice gray color here, and I'm going to use this shape to trim out this shape. And I'm going to break this apart. I'm just going to delete this altogether. Now I can duplicate this, and I can flip it around. Here again, using my snap to objects, and just snap that there. And so that's pretty much what it's like to kind of create your own custom lettering. You just, if you use these grid lines here, these paths, and you create shapes that are kind of equal sized, you can kind of create a nice looking custom font. Oops. And so what I want to do is duplicate this angle here. Now if I combine those two lines and I go back up to my freehand tool, I can create an actual closed shape here. And we'll add our fill. And so that kind of is how I created this S. Now it ended up being a little bit different. But once you create that, obviously I can use, I'll go into wireframe here so you can see, I can use this shape to create part of the T here. So that is essentially what I'm doing to create a custom font. We're just reusing these shapes over and over again. See, these are all the same. You know, every once in a while you'll get to a shape like an A, which will be a little bit different, and you'll have to kind of do something that will match. But from there, I then add a little bit more character to the lettering. And to do that, I kind of create my own little custom, I guess you'd call these serifs. And to do that, I'll show you, I'll go into wireframe once again. I create, and the goal of this is to kind of make it look sort of Victorian. I mean, this is kind of almost looks like crown molding, and it's just kind of a nice little extra touch to this lettering style. And so, you know, I created a circle, and I snapped it to the corner here, and then I created this shape here using my freehand tool. And so when you're all said and done, you can kind of give this a white fill to see how it will look. And we'll get rid of the outlines. Oops. And you know, that kind of gives me that's how I want to do all the corners on my lettering here. And you'll see the T's and the L's and the E's are kind of a little bit different. And I just kind of combined this all together, kind of creating like a, you know, these are pillars and this is kind of an architectural feature here. And so that's how I created those that portion of the lettering. A lot of times when I've got repeating letters like L's or O's, you know, I might, you know, try to combine those in a creative way that kind of adds interest to the lettering, but also kind of make sure that, you know, you want to be careful that when you do things like that, that the lettering is still legible. You don't want to kill that, because if you kill that, you know, what I actually did was I went in here and using the power clip tool, which is another really awesome tool in CorelDRAW, I actually created these kind of counterweights like you would, you know, you might see in a clock. Or I got the idea from this because my parents in their house, they've got an old house, and all the windows have these counterweights that are inside the wall that kind of help. You know, those windows are kind of heavy, so it kind of helps you lift those up. And so let me show you the power clip features. It's really cool. To do a power clip, you can take any shape that you create. You can even do fonts. I mean, you name it. And you would take another shape, or even a photo if you wanted to, and from there you can take that shape, and you can go to Effects, and then you can go to Power Clip and Place Inside Container. And so now that I've done that, I've placed that square inside of this shape. And to get inside of there, you can do a couple different things. One is you can right-click on this shape and go to Edit Contents. Or what I like to do is simply hold down my Control key and click on the shape. And so now I am actually inside of this power clip shape. Everything else on the screen has, with the exception of my guidelines here, have disappeared. It's allowing me to just focus on what's going on inside this shape. And you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like I said, you can put photos in here. We can do some effects, lots of neat stuff. But in this case, I tried real hard to keep this entire piece, with the exception of the steam and the smoke, vector. So when I hold down my control key, and everything's grouped together here, so I'm going to ungroup everything just to show you this. When I hold down my control key and I actually enter in here, you can see what I've done to create this effect. I've used some transparencies here. I've basically taken this this counterweight here, and I've duplicated it and moved it to different levels to kind of create some interest there. I've used this kind of Victorian ornament shape here to add to the top of these, and almost like the weight is going behind some sort of screen that sits out front. I kind of add a little bit of a distressed effect to it. Now this is also in vector, but what you can do is you can actually take a photo, and I'll show you the power trace tools. But you can take a photo, take it down to black and white image, make it real simple, and then use the power trace, and you can actually get textures from, in this case it was a photo of a wall that had plaster that was failing, and you can take it down to a black and white image and then use the Corel's trace to create this kind of cool texture. So that is also in vector. And if I think I got a power clip within a power clip here, so you can see that's all in vector too. So I'm going to pull out of that. And here again, this is the poor man's bevel that I was kind of joking about earlier, and showed you how to do that. I did that here to kind of create a, when light hits things, sometimes the edges light up a little bit differently. I've also had the extrude going on here to create that. I created these little rivets that are all around the design here. And then, I actually created a contour, and if you wanted to play around with the contour feature, it's right in here. And from there, I was able to create a contour that goes around this and make it kind of a deeper brown color, like a real dark copper maybe, and added rivets to that. And so, and you can see I kind of did similar things to this lettering style up here. I've added a bevel here. I've kind of done a similar bevel that makes it look like this area is recessed in a little bit. And there again, it's just starting with the font. In this case, this is kind of curved. I took this this font here, and I actually made it look like it's going around this round shape here. And to do things like that, and I'll do it to this shape here, you go into the same place where your contour and your extrude and your transparency are, and there's this distort feature. And with the distort, oh, I'm sorry, not the distort, wrong one, envelope feature. And so with that, what you're actually able to do is, that's a bad example because that's a swear. Let me show you on some lettering. Sorry about that. I'll do it to this right here. We're going to weld this whole thing together. And yeah, we got this little, now it looks like Mickey Mouse up there, but just for the sake of argument. If you use your envelope tool, you can actually kind of add some kind of roundness to your lettering. And so that's essentially what I did there. I spent a little bit more time on it than what I just showed you, but that's kind of how I did that. All right, so moving right along, I'm going to now get into the fun part. It can also be the tedious part, the part that might make you want to pull your hair out, but the pictorial stuff. Now this is a little bit more, advanced than what I've been showing you, so you'll have to bear with me. But what I did to create this Stella, the actual pictorial part of the Stella design, was I create cartoons, or in this case I actually used it to do this illustration. You know, I didn't add hair or anything like that, but the face looks kind of bad, and there again, that might be because of my abilities on 3D editing. You know, like I said, it's not my forte, but I wasn't happy with that, so I wanted to make her look a little bit more realistic. I like the way the body came together. I like the the clothing that I worked on here, but all in all, I just wasn't happy with the face, so I used this stock photo to do that. And then what I did was, the difficult thing is, you got a photo where her face is real light and her skin tones are real light, and then this is real dark, and that has a lot to do with how I lit the 3D figure. But I need to somehow bring those together. And one way of doing that is, so if we go in here and we take this photo, and what I'm going to actually do is just do her face. And I'm going to convert that to a 300 DPI bitmap. What I then like to do is take that image, and a really cool feature, without going into Photo Paint, I like using Photo Paint every once in a while, but if I can avoid opening up another program, I will. And so if you go up to bitmaps here, there's a lot of really cool bitmap effects right in CorelDRAW without opening up anything else. And one of those that's really powerful is this image adjustment lab. And to go into that, oops, what did I do wrong there? Oh, I see. I need to create that to a 24 DPI image. All right, so to do that, I go into my image adjustment lab, and then I can, adjust my brightness, adjust things like contrast. If I want a little bit more color added, I can do that. Or if I want to kind of gray it out a little bit, I can do that. And you can adjust your temperatures. So what I've essentially done is kind of tweak that until I get something a little bit similar to this, and then using that same technique, or that same image adjustment lab, I did the same thing with the 3D model here until I get them kind of close to where I want. And so that's kind of what I use as a reference for my my vector illustration of this face. And what I'm going to show you now is basically how I've created this part. So we start with our bitmap here. Now in this case, it is a bitmap that's kind of a higher res one. It's above 300 DPI at the time being. When you're doing a vector illustration, it can be lower because really what you're using this for is a reference. But one cool thing I figured out when doing these illustrations that kind of helps me decide where my colors are going to be or where my shapes are going to be is I take the image, I go up to bitmaps, and I go to convert to bitmap, and then what I'll do is I will select paletted. And so what that's going to do is it's going to basically take out a lot of the colors out of my photo here, and it's going to, oops, that's a little too low res. Let's make sure we do it at 300 DPI. We're going to hit OK, and make sure divot isn't selected, because the whole point is to see where the color separations are. And you could, if it's already a photo, these can be unselected. But so what that's done is when you zoom into this, you can actually see where the color, if it wasn't paletted, it might be harder to see this, but you can actually see where the different colors are. And so what I actually do is use that to create my shapes. Now, if you were to simply use Corel's trace bitmap feature, the computer's gonna, the software is gonna trace this, and that's cool for some things. But sometimes having a nice human touch on it will kind of allow it to look a little bit more illustrated and a little bit less like, you know, a computer did it. So in this case, I like to use the Freehand tool. And the cool thing about the Freehand tool is you can use it to rough out shapes. And all I'm doing now is I'm clicking once, and then I am pulling out the line, and then I'm clicking again to stop the line and start a new one. And so you might go around her face like that. Here again, we're using the Freehand tool. And so once you get that kind of roughed out, then you can go up to your shape tool. We can select all of our nodes. We can go to convert to curves. So that's going to basically take all these lines and convert them into curves now. And then I can actually go in and quickly shape this. And some people like to use the Bezier tool to do this type of work, and that's fine. This is something that I actually think works a little bit quicker for me. And the reason why is when I use the Bezier tool, a lot of times I have to come back in and clean it up anyway. So my thought was, well, why don't I just rough it out real quick first and then do all my cleaning up and you know, the precise part of it later. In this case, we're going to have she's going to have a hat on and some goggles and stuff to kind of cover this up, so I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on here. But so I've created a shape using the Freehand tool. Now the other thing the Freehand tool does, and I was kind of doing that here, is if you, instead of clicking once and creating line segments, you can actually click and hold down. And when you click and hold down, you can go in and just kind of do some abstract shapes. Right now I am actually using a mouse to do all this. I just recently got a Cintiq tablet, and you know, obviously that makes this type of stuff a little bit easier, or at least it will. Right now I'm still kind of getting used to it. But you'll notice when I'm creating this shape, it's kind of smoothing stuff out. And to do that, when you select your freehand shape, you'll notice this box here is your freehand smoothing. And the lower that is, the less smoothing it does. And so if you're using a tablet, you know, like the Cintiq or you know, any other brand, I guess, and if you have that turned down, that might work on nice on a tablet, but for a mouse, not so much. So I'll show you the difference. If I have that at like 13 and I draw this with the mouse, it's going to record every little movement. And so we've got a lot of nodes here, and that may be good for some things, but in this case, that's not something I want. You could always go in and select all these nodes and do reduce nodes, and that kind of helps, but it's just an extra step that you have to take. So what I like to do is, if I'm using the mouse, I like to keep that really high, you know, up in the 80s or 90s. And so what that does is that now we can actually come in here and create some nice shapes here. And basically all I'm doing is, you know, it's okay if things overlap. You can always weld and trim or just, you know, keep them overlapped. But here again, if this is the paletted photo, I'm able to see these colors a little bit easier. Here's a highlight here. And sometimes you might just want to end that there. Like I said, I'm going to have something up here anyway, so once I get up into this area, I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on there. But we got some nice highlights here that we can kind of show off. Now what I did there is once I got to here, I'm like, all right, let's just quickly connect this connect this shape together. You know, bring one point together to the other, and you can see if you don't do that, if I try to fill that, if I try to give that shape fill, obviously it's not going to happen. It's still a line segment, so you have to actually close these shapes, and so now you can actually get this fill. And right now I'm not worrying too much about color as far as, you know, filling these shapes in. I'm just worrying about kind of capturing the outlines of where these colors are. But in this case, what I want to do is take this shape and then this shape and use my intersect command here. And now I've created this, kind of captured this darker part of her face. And obviously, you know, once you get the hang of it, and you know, if you don't have to talk throughout this whole thing, this process can go, you know, pretty quick. It just depends on how detailed you make it. You can always, like I said, use your freehand tool to just go in here and edit things as you see fit. You know, the more you actually go in here and clean things up, the more illustrated it's going to look. You know, it's okay to have little, in my opinion, it's okay to have, unless you're doing a real stylized image, it's okay to kind of allow things like this to happen, you know, little notes there. You know, you don't have to clean that out, but you can kind of let that stuff fly on this type of work. Now, usually eyes are kind of fun to do. In this case, since she's got so much kind of makeup going on here, there's not too much to do. In this case, you know, it's just a matter of coming in here using your freehand tool to kind of shape this out. Whoops. See, I kind of guessed a little bit too much there, but here again, you can, it's okay if that overlaps. We can actually come in here and use the intersect to kind of combine that together and make that look a little bit nicer. And you know, if you wanted to get really, really detailed in here, even though you can't see it in the photo, you know, eyes kind of have the this detail here, and you can actually go in and do that type of work. But I kind of wanted to give you the kind of basics on how that's done. I want to allow time for questions here, so I'm going to kind of move along and you know, kind of show you step by step here the rest of this stuff. But when it's all said and done, I have something like this, and right now it's kind of a mess, and you know, it's hard to make out what's going on. But once you actually start adding color, you know, it all starts pulling together. So a real nice, quick and easy way to add like the base colors here is to just take your reference photo, use your eyedrop tool here, and you want to make sure it's on Color Eyedropper, and then you can actually go in and you know, select your colors and pull them over here, and kind of similar to what I've done here. And so you'll end up with this, which still isn't quite, you know, the quality I'm wanting. All I've basically done is use the eyedropper tool to get basic colors. Now from there, what you want to do is use a combination of tools. You can use your interactive fill tool to do gradients, and so we might take this, and then now every time you click and drag, it's gonna add white. So let's take this shape here, and it's gonna add white to it by default. So what I like to do is, you know, let it do that, and then actually go up into here. And the nice thing about, and I think older Corel versions didn't have this, but X5 does, and this is really cool. It's actually got an eyedropper tool right here. So when I'm wanting to change this color, I can use this eyedrop tool and select that color there. And you can kind of fade it together. And you can kind of let this line show through a little bit, because it's okay to, otherwise why not just use a photo? I want to make sure people see that this is actually an illustration. So it's okay to let some of that stuff show through, but we don't want it to look like this. We want it to be a little bit smoother. So I use the interactive fill tool to do stuff like that. And sometimes you might want to, instead of using a line, which would be your default here, you could go up to radial and do something like this instead. And I can do the same thing to this. And in that case, I'd like to keep that white because I want that to be a nice little glare of light there. Here again, same sort of deal. We use the radial. And then we select this color here. And you just kind of keep stepping your way out. And it kind of stair steps its way out. Now, sometimes you'll run into a case where you got two colors here, and you might want this. I've already done my fill here, so I can't really blend this anymore. But these aren't quite matching up quite the way I want it to. So you can always go into your transparency tool and use that to kind of clean that up too. And sometimes you want a hard edge. We might want to keep that kind of, just like we did over here. You want to kind of keep some. This is definitely, we want this to be visible. We don't want to blend this out too much. So it's just a matter of, you always got to look back at your other photo. In my case, I've got dual monitors, so I might have this photo pulled up on the other screen to kind of look over at it to make sure that I'm getting my colors right. But that obviously this isn't looking quite the way I would want it to, but you got to play with it and blend your colors together, and when it's all said and done, you end up with something like this. And here again, we can still see where these lines are, and that's okay. We actually want to show that off. We just want to blend it together a little bit, and that is how I created this entire thing. So if I go into wireframe, it's all done in that way. And so in this case, on her corset here, or corset, as you can tell, I'm not a fashion major. We've got, I basically just created lines, using your freehand tool. And then to make this look like stitching, I'll show you real quick. We'll create a line here. If you select that line, up here you can actually do a line style and do dashed lines. And so that was kind of how I created that to look like stitching. And I'm getting kind of close to my hour here, so that is how I did the illustration. And then when it's all said and done, you kind of take those elements together and bring them together into this one design. And I definitely recommend kind of working on them in separate files, especially if you're doing this much work, because all that stuff in one file will kind of, if you have, depending on your computer speed, I guess, can kind of slow things down a little bit. So sometimes it's nice to kind of, not only for organization's sake, but for your system resources' sake, to kind of keep things separate while you're working on them, and then when it's all said and done, bring them together. And that is, in a nutshell, a few of the things that I've done to create this this design here. So I guess at this point, I need to open this up for questioning.
Yep. Joe, okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Cecile.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Joe. That's really outstanding. Thank you very much. So I have one question related to where to view the recorded session. So everybody will receive automatically the link to the recorded session in a couple of hours. The recorded session will be also available on corel.com/webinars in a couple of days. So now the question more specifically for Joe. So Joe, I have one. How long did it take you, and how do you charge for your work?
That's a good question. I kind of knew that one was coming. How long did this project, I wasn't really keeping track of my time because this isn't for an actual client. It was just kind of a concept drawing. It was just something I did for this contest. So if I were to guess, I'd say anywhere from 60 to maybe 80 hours to do this entire thing. And what you see here isn't the entire project. I also sent in, I actually took this whole design and simplified it into a one-color design for, let's say, like T-shirt screen prints. So there was that. There was some other work that I did for this whole project. But yeah, it took. If I were to guess, anywhere from 60 to 80 hours. And the reason why I say that is, the reason why I don't know for sure is because I did this kind of on my free time. I was clocked out, and I would put in an hour here and an hour there, and in a matter of a couple months. So as far as charging for this type of stuff, man, that could be a seminar in itself. I guess what you want to do is you want to kind of figure out what your overhead would be. You want to figure out what your costs are. It also has to do with your skill level and what people are willing to pay for your services. And then what you might want to do is you could either charge hourly. You could quote out projects. I know some designers that will basically take let's say they'll quote out all certain type, like logo type jobs for they'll quote it out for, let's say, 8 hours, and that will be their set price for that project. And if they create a logo in less than 8 hours or less than 12 hours or whatever that figure they set up is, if they create that design in less than that time, then that's good for them. If they go over it, they can decide to tell the customer, we need to charge more, or they could, eat that time. Like I said, it's a seminar in itself to discuss how to price something like this out. But yeah, you definitely want to figure out what your rate would be, and you could do it hourly. That would be a nice place to start. Cecile, can I add something to your initial announcement about posting it on YouTube?
Yes, for sure.
I don't know if this is possible for you to do, but I did another video that was kind of a speed drawing of a different type of illustration, but it was similar to another female's face, and that might be interesting for some of the viewers to watch, to kind of, I kind of rushed through the face. I apologize for that. You can only do too much in an hour, but if they wanted to see that speed drawing, I could maybe get with you and provide that link, and I think that might be helpful for certain people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great. Before asking a second question, I would like to share with you, Joe, some of the comments. So somebody said, "I want great job, Joe. I want to try their beer." Another said, "Great job, great work. Thanks for inspiring." Yeah. Another question: how is this type of vector work for screen printing?
For screen printing, not very good. I guess it would depend on how your software handles separations. You could turn this whole thing into a bitmap and then let the software try to sort it out. Depending on what your process is for doing screen printing. But in my opinion, based on what what little I know about screen printing, I would think it probably wouldn't tailor itself very well to that. So what I did was, maybe I can show you. Yeah, here we go. I actually took the design and simplified it into a two-color design, and the stuff like the steam or whatever, that looks a little cartoony, and she doesn't quite look as good when she's two-color. But that was one way that I actually simplified it so that you could do things like t-shirts here. So it's definitely possible. It just, it takes some work to kind of to do that by hand. If you were to take something like the original file here and you wanted to try to keep it as, like a 4-color print, I might recommend, looking into some software to do that for you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Another comment, awesome webinar, Joe, not question, just wanted to say that technical knowledge of the program is one thing, but it's the talent of the artist that set it apart. Great job.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, a lot of very positive feedback, Joe, thank you. Another question is related to blending. Any tips on blending?
Like I said, I use the eyedrop tool that's actually within. When you use your gradient tools here. So let's create a shape here. As you can see, it's kind of slow when I've got everything on one screen here, but. Like I said, if I'm blending 2 colors together and I'm doing this with vector shapes, I really like to use the built-in eyedropper tool here. It really helps kind of, we get rid of the outlines here. Oops, wrong button. That kind of created a perfect blend here. And like I said, you may want to go past that a little bit so you can show off your vector lines. I like to kind of show that stuff off so people can see. There's also this mesh fill tool. I am by no means a mesh fill tool expert. I've played around with it. It's just kind of not my thing. It's very cool. It's something that I'd like to learn how to use a little bit more, but that's another thing you can use to kind of help with your blends and your vector illustrations. I see a lot of vector illustrators use these types of tools, the mesh tool, so I definitely recommend giving that a shot. Hello?
Yep. Sorry, I was.
Oh, sorry.
It's me. I was on mute. There is one of the seminar. Letterhead members across the globe know this guy is a champion. One question, a very interesting question. Why not use a mesh fill?
Yeah, I kind of answered that in the last one. It's just. Like I said, I kind of like to show off the lines of the vector shapes, but it's a little bit of that and a little bit of the mesh tool is not something I'm as comfortable using. I kind of like using, it's just like using the freehand tool instead of the Bezier tool. I've kind of come up with a process that works well for me. I definitely recommend everyone out there try to figure out what that process may be for them, and in my case. If I use the mesh tool, I rarely use it just because I'm just not quite as comfortable using it, and I like to show off my the vector lines in my illustrations. So.
Okay, excellent. Last question.
Okay.
What are your computer specs to produce this in terms of hard drive, CPU, RAM, video, etc.?
Well, this computer's a few years old, so it's not crazy fast. My laptop's actually a lot faster. But I've got the AMD quad-core processor here. I've got 8 gigs of RAM. I'd say between all the computers here in the shop and our kind of little, I guess you'd call it a server, we've probably got about 8 terabytes worth of hard drive space, and some of these files, especially like this file, can get pretty large. But really, when you're doing vector, your file size aren't crazy huge compared to when you've got a lot of bitmap effects going on. So you know, my website projects that I do, those files get pretty large. So yeah, having lots of hard drive space is a must. So good question though.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joe. So, unfortunately, we are just about out of time. And thank you again, Joe. Thank you very much. Comments are very positive. We may perhaps do another webinar like this one in the upcoming month. People, unfortunately, some of the people have missed the beginning of the webinar, but one more time, the recorded session will be available on corel.com/webinars. Also, I want to apologize because during the 15 last minutes of the webinar, it seemed that we had a little of audio problems. I'm pretty sure it's more linked to the connections with internet. So I apologize for everybody. Usually we are preparing our webinars in a very serious way. And unfortunately, we can't really plan for the effectiveness of internet connection. So thank you everyone for attending this webinar today. And thank you again, Joe, for sharing all your best techniques. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. And I would like to say bye-bye and perhaps talk to you during the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.